Running your business solo gives you freedom, but what happens when you want time off? Scaling can grow your income, but it also comes with its own set of headaches. In this episode, we're diving into what it really looks like to stay solo versus building a team. We'll discuss what's right for you and just break it down. Welcome to episode 7 of the Unfiltered Profit podcast. Seanna and I are here today to talk about solo versus scaling. And Seanna, how has it worked for you?
Yeah, I love this topic because I think for a lot of business owners, we start off in this place where we're like, I just want to be solo, right? Like, I'm tired of working for someone else. I want to build my own thing. But honestly, I don't really want to have a team. Like, I'm not trying to have HR headaches and all the things that come with managing a team. I don't want that at all. I just want to build my own thing, serve some clients, be happy, have a flexible schedule. And so we tend to naturally fall into that solo place in a season. And then sometimes you accidentally fall into, well, I think I want to scale because your priorities change or your interests change or different things. I think that is kind of true for both me and you in starting our individual firms before we merged into Prospera.
Without a doubt. I know I started alone. And then when I was having my 4th kid, it was like, I can't do this anymore and grow, right? So that's always the thing. It's like that trade-off. And with where I wanted to grow, in the amount of hours I was willing to work, it came down to, I think for me at least, it was hiring within the business or hiring childcare, drop off people, like that home piece.
Yeah.
And I wasn't ready to hire in the home. It felt safer. It felt like the judgment was fully myself on myself, but it felt like the better mom choice to pick the employee to come and do the business thing. And then I would do the drop offs and pickups and meal planning and all of that with the kids. So that was my push to hiring my first employee. And I still would have considered it a pretty solo business with just us two. Like there wasn't a whole lot going on.
Yeah. And I think that's pretty normal. You feel like maybe you have contractors, maybe it's a W-2 employee, maybe you've hired out a few functions, marketing or admin or something, but you don't really view that as scaling. And it's not. That's still a solo op, a very small op. And I think depending on who you're following online, you can hear things like you need to scale. Like if you have a solo op, you've just built yourself a job, you don't really have a business. And then, there are the other people that are like, scaling's not all it's cracked up to be, stay small, that kind of thing. And you're like sitting there, maybe caught in the middle. Well, who should I listen to? What is good? And it's like, there's not good or bad. There's just trade-offs with each one. So I'm excited to kind of dive into that because we are walking that. We are in the process of focusing on scaling, on building team, but we have been in that place where we were really focused more on being solo ops. So we know what's pushing us to scale and what kept us in the other place as well. And doesn't mean it'll be the same for everyone listening to this, but kind of walk through our process of what that looks like and what we have considered in those trade-offs.
Yeah. And I don't know about you, but I also have these conversations with clients a lot when they're trying to decide where to go and maybe the emotions say one thing, but they're leaning on us for that like logic and numbers help. So we can also kind of tap into what we guide others with. Because again, we can't make the decision. It's all so unique, but we can at least provide those goods, the pros, cons, the money pieces, all that fun stuff. But yeah, so what were the pros for you for staying solo?
I think the biggest thing was that I just didn't want some of the responsibility that came with having a team. You have to make payroll, you have to make decisions for other people's livelihood and keep that in mind. And there's a lot more pressure than if you're like, well, if I have 10 clients, then I get to take home X amount of dollars. If I have 12 clients, I take home Y, versus you start adding team in and it's like, well, I need this many clients to cover their payroll. So I've got to add this many more onto our roster. There's pressure there, right? There's growth pressure with having a team and then making sure the team is operating efficiently and you're making the margins you need to make so that you're paying yourself what you want. Business is much more complicated when you're scaling, when you're adding team. It's not that complicated when you're just like getting your contracts or getting your clients and just doing the thing on a monthly basis.
Yeah, it felt a lot less permanent for me. And maybe that's that like ADHD piece, but like I felt like I could close up shop next month and it would be fine, right? Like it would just be me who was affected. I only had to keep enough cash in the savings account for myself. And if I ever needed help, like contractors were fine. And again, that concept being like, I don't have to continue with them if clients leave. It felt safer in some ways of like,
Yes.
okay, well, this is fine. Less pressure, like you had said. And if I get tired of this idea and I want to do something else, then I'll just do that. And a lot less of the corporate meetings. Meetings were what always scared me about scaling. I was like, oh, I'm going to spend more time on Zoom talking to team members, managing and training than I will doing the work. So, yeah.
But I will say that the other thing with having a very small team, being that kind of solo op, I went on sailing vacations with my husband and I took my laptop and I was having to answer client emergent type things because they weren't something I was going to push on my team member. They were too high level for that. Could I have managed expectations with my client of like, I'm out of office for 10 days? Sure, but that's not what they were paying me for. They were paying me for a certain type of role, which was a little more like not leaving them hanging for 10 days. So yeah, I was in the British Virgin Islands figuring out how to have Wi-Fi and manage some transactions and things that had to occur. And that's kind of the trade-off of being in that versus having your team completely manage client accounts and really be stepping into more of that business owner role, less of the client service piece.
Yeah, I remember for both my kids, like I was working at the hospital before and after delivery because it was just me. It was me and I mean Katie, but if there was anything urgent and all of my kids decided they wanted to be born around month close, so we had that problem going on. So yeah, it was the great part of that flexibility also comes with like it's just really hard to take that time off and still meet the deliverables with clients and as much as both the clients and yourself will communicate that and they'll sell their like they will say they're fine with it and they're okay with it, but then they email you and they're like, hey, this feels kind of emergent. Could you handle it? And
I've had clients literally within the same email. I had something going on personally and was like, I'm sorry, I'm out of the office this week. And they would be like, I'm so sorry you're going through that, but who's going to answer my questions? You know, like, I'm so sorry, I'm praying for you. Who's going to answer my questions? I'm like, are you kidding me?
It's hard. And so in many different industries, I know financial industries, we deal with that a lot of like, that's great, but and maybe if you are in something like marketing or branding, maybe you have a little bit more ability to stay solo longer because maybe you just don't take contracts on. But if you're in anything that's kind of that more sensitive, continual contact, I think when we start talking like, hey, you actually want time off, scaling starts to look kind of nice.
Yes, it does. And before we get into the money side of it, I think the other thing I'd like to dive into is like what you decide as a business owner you would like to be doing. I know this has been one of the biggest things for me in this decision to go from a solo op to scaling is that I just didn't want to do the same stuff I was doing as an accountant anymore. I have other interests. We have like webinars we want to do, more training, this podcast, like all these things that I wanted to start layering in because I'm interested in them. They'll help me grow. It's just what I want my work to look like. And there was absolutely no way for me to stay in the role I was in, the team that we had, and be able to do those. There just aren't enough hours in the day. So the only option was adding team in and scaling, adding clients in order to allow space in my schedule for doing these parts of growing the business.
Yeah, it's for sure that challenge. And I felt the same. Because if I had stayed at corporate or at Deloitte or something like that, I would have grown into that level of like a partner where I'm reviewing and I'm actually spending more of my time sales, training folks, and a lot less time on like the day-to-day details. And I think based on just my amount of time in the career, which is 15 years now, like that feeling just finally hit of like I'm ready for what I would have been doing anywhere else, which is to really just a new skill set of what does it look like to train a team and to teach more than do and to get sales and networking, all of that you just need that time for.
Learn new things that we then get to teach the team, apply to our clients, all that kind of stuff that you don't have space for if you're just like working that same client load day in, day out.
Yeah. So it's a really exciting piece to look at the scaling. It's just like you as an individual wanting a new challenge. And that's probably where a lot of that does spur from for folks. It's like, okay, I'm ready for that new challenge. And so some folks will seek that in, I'm going to sell this business and create a new one, or I'm going to grow this one to a point where I'm out. I know when I take on clients, I will ask them, what's the end goal of this business? Because that changes things. And some of them are like, it's my name, whatever happens, happens. And some will be like, no, my plan's to sell. And so if that's the case, kind of scaling becomes almost a requirement if that's what you want to do.
Yep. But I know even that was kind of part of our conversation. And we're going to dive into this in future episodes. But part of the merger conversation is like, where do we see the business going? Where do we see ourselves fitting in? Because we were both the heads of our own ship, right? We were both the captain. And it's like, how do you have co-captains? What does that look like? And you have to start thinking about personality too, in that of like, are you somebody that feels like they can run a team and wants to, right? If you've decided you want to, then you got to like be really honest with yourself and your skill set and decide like, is that something that I have the experience, the education, the personality, all of those things to be able to do and run the business?
Yeah. Because otherwise it just doesn't work. And I do want to like preface this. If you were out on like the Instagrams of the world, the quick answer seems to be like hire team members in so that you can take more time off and you can do the things that you want to do. But if you don't have the personality for it, you don't have the desire for it, that's going to just tank your business. You're adding a huge expense without the desire to take care of that expense and treat it more as an investment. You're treating it like an expense.
Yeah. And we see that with clients that they're adding in team and then they're not necessarily figuring out whether that team is operating efficiently. So all of a sudden the margins go down the tubes and the business that would have been profitable as a solo op is no longer profitable or not making as much profit. And now they see themselves taking out SBA loans and all these different things where it's like the business is just not doing well from a cash standpoint. And that comes down to really stepping into that business owner role of scaling. And if you're not stepping there and you're still keeping yourself in a technician kind of place and not managing your team, we can see a lot of bad things happen financially.
Yeah, without a doubt. And it just, it really comes down to that end goal, that like, how do you see this ending? And how do you want that day to day? Because you'll find the confirmation bias wherever. So like you can take anything from this episode and you'll be like, oh, that confirms I should stay solo or I should scale. I mean, I've got books on my shelf for both scaling and staying solo, one of them being like Company of One or something like that. And I was like, this is perfect. This definitely confirms, and I read it last year, why I want to stay solo. But again, things change, and being open to those changes, I think, are huge. So if you were to talk a client through this, like what would you talk them through if they are solo? Because again, you're going to start solo generally no matter what, unless you're buying a business that's already established. But if you're starting solo, like and they came to you and they're like, hey, I want more revenue and more time. Like, how would you kind of walk them through making that decision?
I think the first thing that I warn clients about with it, and this is getting into the financial metrics of it, is so most of the time when you're at this point where you're like, I've got to do something, like I think I want to add team, you're probably at this place where you and whoever you're currently working with are operating at like max hours that you want to pour into the business. So you've got the revenue stream. That's not a problem. You have that marketing or whatever the lead source is good to go. You're not a new business from that standpoint. And you're probably at max profitability too. Like you're taking a good amount of money out of the business, able to pay yourself well, but you're working a ton of hours and you don't necessarily want to cut away those clients or turn off the revenue stream, but things can't stay the same. And you're like walking yourself mentally through like, yeah, okay, I think I want to step into the business owner role a little bit more. The thing you have to know on the financial side is like, you financially take a hit in the scaling period because you're going to have to decide whether you're just going to kind of like push your team too hard, push yourself too hard. All of a sudden you're working 60, 80-hour weeks as you build up more clients to then be able to give those over to employees, or you're hiring employees ahead of those clients coming in the door, which is a lot of times, as long as you've built up cash, the better thing to do so that employees are well trained and ready when those clients come in the door. But your profitability takes a hit during that period, and you can start to feel like you made a wrong choice because you get impatient with waiting for the revenue to catch up. But you just have to know that this is going to happen. It's just part of this kind of like stair-stepped approach to scaling. but it's uncomfortable.
Very uncomfortable. On the plus side, less taxes that you have to pay.
Yeah.
Income taxes, you're paying FICA taxes, but hey, so if you're looking for a deduction, it is very hard. And the other thing, I guess for me, when I knew it was time to make that switch, or what I would ask clients is like, a lot of the ability to keep afloat was riding on the one person that I had brought in. And gosh forbid they leave. That part was terrifying. And so as you're scaling, the really concept is like, you have to change that mindset of like, okay, it's the two of us or just myself forever and ever. And quickly it became, okay, how do we protect ourselves on all fronts, cross training and changing? And so scaling is not only like, hey, can we have more clients, but like, are we protecting all the employees in case somebody does leave, that we can hire again? I would love to say everyone will be with us forever and be with your team forever, but the truth is that like it's still a job, and to them it's your flesh and blood and baby, whatever you want to call it, but it is a job to them, and we can keep them happy, but
but their life circumstances might change at any point, and they might have to go, whether they want to or they don't, or whatever that looks like. And so that, we talked about security of the solo op, because all of a sudden you're not having to take care of team. But there is security in scaling, because now like you lose one client and it doesn't matter so much, because now you have more clients, or one team member leaves, and it sucks for a period of time while everyone picks up the additional workload and you fill that spot, but the world didn't fall apart because that one team member left. So there's security in both ways. It just depends on what type of security you're looking for,
what risk you want to handle. I know the other piece for me was, because of the work I do, I was terrified that something would happen to me, especially during tax season. And I was like, who's going to notify all my clients? I'm like, tell them I can't file the taxes, and what's going to happen? Like, that part was so scary. And so suddenly scaling felt safer, of like, there will be a process there. There will be other people there. But I'm like leaving my husband notes to like, this is how you get into the master password, and this is how you email like the very tiny team that doesn't really exist. And from there, hopefully they can wind down this business for you, because I won't be here.
Just figure it out.
Good luck. And I think it's a good client experience too, because you're not overworked anymore. And so that's the other piece. I'd say if you're solo and it's getting to the point where your client experience is suffering because you can't do it all and you're not happy doing it all, scaling starts to become something to really consider, and putting those processes in place and getting those people there.
Yes. I don't know how many times in the past year I've looked at a process in business and been like, I am the bottleneck. Like, who's the problem? I'm the problem.
That Taylor Swift song,
Yes. Like, it is me. It's because I needed to get myself out of that process, because it was the last thing I wanted to spend any time doing, or I had other more pressing matters, any of that stuff that stepped in the way of it. But that doesn't help the client experience for me to be bogged down with more important things and, not handling that aspect as quickly as needs to be handled, or forgetting about it or anything.
Without a doubt. And for me too, I think as I became bored, the client experience suffered too. So not that I didn't love my clients and I didn't love serving them, but the problems were just becoming regular. And I was like, oh, I kind of like something new. And sometimes that came along in a new client, but it was like, okay, if I could be excited again, then that translates to the clients being happier and more things working easier. For folks who are thinking about this, what are some fears that you had to overcome in moving from solo to scaling?
I think the biggest fear for me was just will I be able to scale enough to maintain my lifestyle from the business? How much pay I have been receiving? Because you get used to that and you want that, and you're not sitting there trying to put in more work in order to get less pay, right? Which does happen sometimes in scaling. And I was like, I don't want to do that in this season of life. And I also don't want to start scaling and then realize, oh, I haven't built as good of a lead source as I thought, and the revenue's not coming in the door, the clients aren't coming in the door. I don't know how to figure that part out. As accountants, especially, that's always, I think, our biggest struggle is that, yes, everybody needs taxes. So there's that aspect of like, everybody needs us, but we're also horrible at marketing, quote unquote.
Yes. I think it's just different marketing.
Yes.
But for me, it was definitely the fear of passing off current clients. And so we haven't fully done that yet, but like, because before we did this, I was definitely more, so Seanna's brand was more of what I would call like an accounting firm brand, and mine was much more of a personal brand. And so I was like, people were buying me. And so can I start distancing myself and pulling myself out? It fully has not happened. And there are clients where it will never happen, but it is definitely a new mindset too of being like, well, can I sell a firm instead of myself too? So that has been, as long with the money, but that has been a big piece of like, this is weird and this is hard. And what if it just doesn't work? So scaling,
that is hard even as a firm brand, because you get on a call and somebody asks you, well, are you going to be doing it? Right? Like that still happens now. It's like, well, is this just another one of those things where you just pass me off to somebody else? And maybe we'll have a whole episode about like why you want to be passed off to somebody else versus Seanna and Caitlynn being the one to answer every question. Please rewind and listen to the whole like less pressing matters, get less attention part of this episode. When there's team servicing, they can answer those questions more.
They can. And then it's multiple eyes, which is the other piece that like we just didn't have in a solo firm. So when you're hiring technically, I think there is something to be said for multiple levels of review and of eyes on it. And while I'd like to think I'm just amazing at what I do, like there's just times where you're in the middle of a tax return and a kid starts screaming or something else catches your attention, and just be nice if someone else had a set of eyes on it. So
yes, absolutely.
Whatever that is, right? So you have someone who reviews your copywriting, or it's just nice when you have that piece. And then you've created this company that people can go and take time off and the world doesn't crumble.
Yes. And everyone is still getting served very, very well in that process.
Yeah. And I mean, like we said, there's no good or bad. I think there's a lot of like marketing around the quick answer being to scale no matter what. And that if you just are creating your job, did it really count? And I'd say it counts. I mean, if you were out there bringing in the sales and doing all of the things it takes to run a business, like that's not a job. A job is like, I am here to do these like 5 tasks.
Yeah.
And
all you have to do is sit back and think about all the things that you can't ask your employee to do for you. And then you know that you don't just have a job, you have a business, regardless of how many team members are on your payroll.
Yes. Yeah. So if you're debating it, look at the numbers, of course, look and see where you want to go. Really, I'd say soul search and see if you have a desire. I'd say especially a desire to sell. And we can talk someday about like what it looks like to sell your business, but basically you need to be able to remove yourself. And so if you can't do that, it just affects what you can sell. But I would take a look at those things, your numbers, your fears, talk through those and get ready maybe for a financial pinch. And I think that was for Sean and I too. We were just at a place where we could handle kind of that roller coaster that was going to happen financially for us.
Yes, 100%.
So whether you're flying solo or building a team, the key is knowing what you want in business and in life, like we talked about today. And there's no one size fits all. Sean and I are a testament to that. There's trade-offs no matter what the decision you make is, and you just have to be happy with those, or at least content. So if this got you thinking, hit subscribe, share it with a business friend who's maybe going through the same thing. And if you're stuck between solo and scaling, then please feel free to reach out. All of our information's in our show notes. And you can always head over to our website to schedule a call with us. We hope you enjoyed this, and we'll see you at the next episode.